General Douglas MacArthur said that in war, every disaster can be explained by two words: too late. And the question is whether the conservative wing of the Republican Party, a.k.a. the Republican wing of the Republican Party, is beginning too late to rally against Mr. Trump.
That's columnist George Will saying it could be too late for Republicans who want to stop Donald Trump from winning the party's nomination for president. This after the National Review last week released its Against Trump special issue, including essays from a couple of dozen top conservative commentators explaining why they think the billionaire real estate developer should not get the Republican nomination. Let's talk about it with our media panel today. There's Tammy Bruce, radio talk show host and Fox News contributor. Alan Colmes, you know, host of the Alan Colmes Show, nationally syndicated by Fox News Radio. Well, you got to hand it to the National Review, you know, for coming up with an issue that we're still talking about this week.
Yeah, look, I think it's great to have the conversation, but it is, in fact, a bit too late. And a lot of my listeners are wondering, where were they when John Boehner passed the largest tax increase in history when we first gave the House to the Republicans? Where have they been when it comes to all of what, well, with Obamacare and the pledges to stop it and it never really managing to stop? There's been no real symposium, if you will, against the liberal dynamic of what's been pushed by the Republican establishment. And now suddenly, and it is late, it's also an indication of the mistakes that have been made in the past, misreading the nature of what the electorate is up to, misreading what the base is thinking. And when it's suddenly too late, when they realize that the Republican nominee will likely be the president, suddenly they're getting nervous. And it's a good effort, but I think a bit too late.
Too late, Alan?
Probably. The people following Trump aren't real conservatives necessarily. He's got a coalition of people who don't just walk the ideological conservative line. The people speaking out are smart to speak out, but, you know, it gives Trump the opportunity to go against the media again, which sits well with his base. There's a magazine, National Review. He knocks the media, and that's pretty much been his, you know, in his wheelhouse, what he talks about. So that helps him, he gets again, once again to knock the media in the form of the magazine that's put out this narrative against him.
There on screen is the list of some of the prominent conservative writers and thinkers who wrote against Trump in that special issue. Rich Lowry was on ABC over the weekend with Martha Raddatz and asked to defend that issue. Here's what he had to say.
It's not the so-called establishment necessarily that's opposing Trump. In fact, as we speak, you have elements of the political establishment among Republicans hiding under their desk, figuring out how they can possibly co-opt or deal with Donald Trump. We wanted to make the point that's principled conservatives who oppose Trump. We want to win this election. We want to do it with a conservative, and we think we can.
It sounds like you might agree with him that some Republican leaders or conservative leaders are hiding under their desks.
I think a lot of people don't know what to do with this, but in their editorial specifically, they mentioned that they want to save the broad conservative consensus in the GOP. This was a magazine targeted at saving the party. This is not about independent conservatives who were not interested in that. So I take issue with him. I respect every single one of the people who did this. But I have to say that it would be better suited, instead of being against something, to figure out how to realize what the base is doing, what to be for, because Americans vote for things, not against them, and frankly, how to articulate the conservative ideal, which this is the first time I've seen in a while, people trying to jostle to do that. This is why Trump's doing well, because no one's been told what the conservative ideal is.
One of the reasons Republicans haven't stopped Obamacare, as you pointed out before, you mentioned Obamacare, is because they're not for anything. They have no replace to repeal and replace.
They do have a replacement, but they just couldn't manage to do it politically. I don't know what that replacement is. I'd like to know what it is if they happen to have one. You know, Trump is incidentally, David Brooks, the New York Times, actually said Rubio over the weekend. He said it's going to be Rubio. He continues to say it's going to be Rubio. You know, I think there's a great either denial or maybe a very strong effort to make sure in the Republican Party that whatever they can do to stop Trump, whether it's ballot access, they'll do in order to stop him from the nomination. They're going to lose a lot. The system as it is now, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of power, and they realize, the system, that if Trump is elected, and I'm not on the Trump train, by the way, I prefer Ted Cruz, but if either one of those guys are elected, a lot of people who are going to think they're going to get a job are not going to get a job. And this is what I think that the disruption's about.
Alex Castellanos from Purple Strategies, also on ABC, talking about that National Review special issue and whether all of the anti-Trump fervor comes too late. Listen.
I think as much as I love National Review and thank it for making me the conservative I am today, I think they've shown up at the war long after the last shot's been fired here. They're telling the Republican Party to pull its ripcord long after we've hit the ground and gone splat.
But, you know, all along, Tammy, the consensus has been, you know, Trump is a flash in the pan. When he first announced his candidacy, people thought he'd be up there for a couple of weeks, and then he'd disappear.
Yeah. I mean, this is not new, actually, saying finally they're coming together to be against Trump. All we've heard from the beginning is against Trump. So it's not new, but you're right. It's been the attitude of both the media. Remember when Huffington Post put him in the entertainment section? This has been an underestimation, again, of the people, of the nature of what's occurring. And in this case, since clearly the establishment hasn't done very well on either side, maybe this is something we give a shot to.
You know, Alex Castellano says last shot been fired. Not one vote has been cast yet. We haven't had Iowa, a week away from Iowa. We haven't had New Hampshire. Haven't had Super Tuesday. To say the last shot's been fired, nobody's gone to the ballot box.
All right.
True.
Good point. You agree on that? We have to leave it there.
The broken clock is right twice a day.
Tammy Bruce and Alan Colmes.